There's a version of you that's been waiting. Waiting to feel ready. Waiting to feel confident. Waiting for that morning where you wake up and something just clicks. Where the motivation finally shows up on time, fully charged, and says, okay, now we go. I want you to sit with something for a second. What if that morning never comes? Not because you're broken, not because you're lazy, but because it was never designed to come. You've been waiting on a feeling to give you permission to become someone, and feelings, by their nature, don't keep appointments. They show up late. They cancel. They ghost you for weeks and then hit you out of nowhere on a random Tuesday when you have absolutely nothing planned. So here's the question underneath all of this. If you can't count on the feeling, what can you count on? Most people think greatness is a mood, a high, a surge of inspiration that grabs you by the collar and drags you into a better version of your life. And when that surge doesn't show up, they read it as a verdict. They think, I guess I'm just not built for this right now, and they go back to scrolling, back to waiting, back to the holding pattern. Here's what nobody tells you. The people you admire, the ones who seem locked in, who seem to have some kind of internal engine that never quits, they don't feel ready most of the time either. They just stopped requiring the feeling as a precondition. That's the whole trick. That's the entire secret hiding in plain sight. Think about the last time you truly didn't want to do something and did it anyway. Maybe it was a workout. Maybe it was showing up to a job you weren't excited about. Maybe it was having a hard conversation with someone you love. Did the feeling arrive first, or did you just start moving and the feeling caught up to you halfway through? That's not a coincidence. That's how it actually works. Action creates feeling far more often than feeling creates action. We've got it backwards, and we've had it backwards for so long that it feels like a law of nature instead of just a habit of thought. Let's slow this down. Because I don't want this to just sound like a nice line. I want you to actually understand the mechanics of it. Your brain is not designed to make you feel good. It's designed to keep you safe. Those are two very different jobs, and people confuse them constantly. When you imagine doing something hard, starting the project, having the tough conversation, showing up to train when your body's tired, your brain doesn't ask, will this make my life better? It asks, is this dangerous? And discomfort, to an ancient part of your brain, reads as danger. So it stalls you. It gives you a heavy, foggy, unmotivated feeling, hoping you'll sit back down. That feeling isn't a signal that you're not ready. It's just your nervous system doing its job a little too well for the modern world we live in. Here's where it gets interesting, though. That system runs on prediction. It looks at your patterns, what you've done before in situations like this one, and it uses that history to decide how much resistance to throw at you. Every single time you decide anyway, despite the feeling, you're not just getting one task done, you're editing the prediction. You're quietly telling your own mind, this is who I am now. I'm someone who moves regardless. Do that enough times and the resistance gets smaller. Not because you found some secret reserve of motivation, but because your brain stopped treating the action as a threat. It's not magic. It's repetition, rewriting, expectation. Now, think about the version of your life this actually applies to. You don't need to feel like getting up early to get up early. You don't need to feel confident to walk into the room and speak clearly. You don't need to feel deserving to ask for what you're worth, to set the boundary, to close the tab, put the phone down, and start the work that actually moves your life forward. You just need to decide, and then act like the decision was already made because it was. Let's bring this into something a little more tangible, because ideas like this can float away if we don't ground them. Think about the difference between two people trying to build a better routine, a better body, a better sense of control over their own life. One of them treats every day as a referendum. Do I feel good today? Do I feel motivated? If yes, they go hard. If no, they skip it and they tell themselves they'll make up for it tomorrow when they're in a better headspace. The other person treats the decision as already settled. They decided once, not every single morning, that this is simply what they do now. The feeling is irrelevant to the outcome. Tired, unmotivated, distracted, doesn't matter. The action still happens. Maybe smaller, maybe slower, but it happens. 10 years from now, these are not two people with a slightly different routine. These are two entirely different lives. Not because one of them was more talented, or had better luck, or felt more inspired on any given day, but because one of them turned identity into infrastructure, and the other kept renting their behavior out to whatever mood showed up that morning. That's the quiet, unglamorous truth about people who seem great. It was never really about the feeling. It was about how few of their actions were actually up for negotiation. Here's the shift, and I want you to really let this land, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. You've been treating greatness or discipline or growth, whatever word fits you, as a destination you arrive at once you feel like a certain kind of person. But it's not a destination. It's a decision you keep making quietly, without applause, especially on the days it doesn't feel earned yet. This changes how you make decisions in a very specific way. Instead of asking, "Do I feel like doing this?" which puts your entire life at the mercy of your nervous system's mood on a random Tuesday, you start asking a much smaller, much more honest question. What would the version of me who already decided this do right now? That question strips out all the noise. It doesn't ask you to feel brave. It doesn't ask you to feel ready. It just asks you to act in alignment with a decision you already made, even if your emotions haven't caught up to the memo yet. And here's the part that brings peace instead of pressure, because this isn't about forcing yourself into some relentless, joyless grind. It's actually the opposite. When you stop waiting for the feeling, you stop the exhausting internal negotiation that happens every single morning. You know the one? The back and forth, the guilt, the bargaining with yourself about whether today counts or not. That negotiation is mentally expensive. It drains you far more than the actual task ever does. When the decision is already made, there's nothing left to negotiate. You just move. And there's a strange kind of calm in that. Less anxiety, not more, because uncertainty is what creates stress, and "I already decided" removes the uncertainty. So how does this actually show up in a normal week, in a normal life, without turning into some extreme, unsustainable version of yourself that burns out in 3 weeks? Start small and start specific. Don't decide to become disciplined. That's too vague to act on. Decide one very concrete thing. I'm someone who trains 4 mornings a week, regardless of mood. I'm someone who responds to hard emails within a day instead of avoiding them. I'm someone who puts the phone in another room during the first hour of work. Pick one identity level decision, not 10. One decision made once is far more powerful than 10 vague intentions you renegotiate every day. Then, lower the bar for what counts as doing it. This is where a lot of people quietly sabotage themselves. They think showing up means showing up at full intensity, and if they can't bring full intensity, they don't show up at all. But a 5-minute version of the habit still reinforces the decision. A short, honest conversation still counts as having the hard conversation. Consistency at a smaller scale beats intensity you can't sustain. The goal isn't to perform greatness for an audience. The goal is to keep proving the decision to yourself, in whatever size the day allows. And give yourself permission to feel resistant while still following through. This might be the most important reframe of all. You don't need the resistance to disappear before you act. You can feel completely unmotivated, slightly annoyed, tired, distracted, and still do the thing. In fact, that's exactly when the decision means the most, because anyone can act aligned with their goals when it feels easy. The version of you that acts anyway, on the flat, gray, uninspired days, that's the version actually building something. That's the version compounding, quietly, whether you notice it or not. Track the decision, not the outcome, at least at first. Outcomes are slow. They lag behind effort in ways that can feel discouraging if that's the only thing you're measuring. But you can measure whether you kept the decision today. Did I act like the person I decided to be? Even a little? That's a question you can answer honestly every single evening, and it builds a kind of self-trust that outcome chasing never quite gives you. Here's what I want you to walk away with. You are allowed to not feel ready. You are allowed to feel tired, uncertain, behind, unmotivated, and still be someone who's building a life you're proud of. Those two things were never actually in conflict. We just assumed they were, because we were taught to wait for permission from a feeling that was never going to reliably show up. Greatness was never a personality some people are lucky enough to be born with. It's closer to a decision made quietly and then defended in small, unremarkable moments that nobody else will ever see. Nobody's watching the morning you get up anyway. Nobody's watching the day you send the email you were avoiding. Nobody claps when you close the tab and get back to work. That's exactly why it matters. Because it's yours. It was never for an audience. So if today doesn't feel like the day you finally feel ready, that's fine. You were never supposed to wait for that. Decide anyway. Act like the decision is already made, because from this moment, it can be. Not perfectly, not dramatically, just consistently. One quiet choice at a time. That's the whole thing. That's always been the whole thing. Progress doesn't ask you to feel great first. It just asks you to keep showing up like you already do.